Hi, today's story is about traveling to Africa. One of my goals as a teacher is to not only educate students about history and the joy of history and herstory, and also how we can't really understand who we are as human beings in our culture if we don't understand the past. I also want to inspire and help people see the joy of travel and seeing other cultures and experiencing them. Traveling to Africa is one of the most amazing things I have ever done. And I have yet to meet somebody who's been to Africa who doesn't say, I wish I could go back. Everybody who goes loves it. There's something about this continent that makes a person fall in love with the people, the culture, the geography, and everything about it. So I flew to Africa and I landed in South Africa. And I spent 6 weeks in Africa. And my goal was to go from Cape Town, which is at the very bottom of Africa, up to the equator, which is approximately 3,500 miles. And just to give you some idea of how large Africa is, when you see that red squiggly line on the map, that's 3,500 miles. But going from San Francisco to New York is 2,900 miles. So that's like going farther than that. Well, let's learn a little bit about this trip. So I arrived in Johannesburg, and I was actually visiting a friend of mine, Seth, who you see in the upper right-hand corner. And he was there on a medical internship. He's now a doctor, and he wanted to help people in the townships to get adequate health care. So you can see that in Africa, many cities are just like you would see in any first world nation like the United States, with big buildings and trees and people and vendors on the streets selling their wares, with eating establishments. There's even one which has a picture of Elvis Presley, and you see me and Seth taking a photo with that because we both had hair very similar to him in that photo. And then there are some dealings with poverty that are very difficult in some countries in Africa, and South Africa is no different than others. So you can see that medical establishment at the bottom, all those people waiting in essentially a container for help in a clinic that Seth was working at. So I started my journey in Cape Town, South Africa. You can see the bay there at the top, how beautiful it is. It's an amazing city. And then I went to the Cape of Good Hope, which many consider to be the place where the Indian and the Atlantic Oceans meet at the bottom of Africa. The Indian Ocean is a warm water ocean from the eastern side, and the Atlantic is a cold water ocean from the western side. So it's very interesting when they meet there. And what's cool about it is at the bottom, you will also see that there are penguins in Cape Town. One year, the penguins, which normally live in Antarctica, just showed up at this beach, and every year they now come back. So you can go visit them. Finally, one thing I wish I had done, but I didn't know it was important at the time for me, was to go to Robben Island and to visit where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned there. I find Nelson Mandela to be a very inspirational man. And one of the things that he did is he actually memorized a poem called Invictus, which he would recite to himself and to other inmates during his more than 30 years in prison. And I've also memorized this poem because I find it so powerful. And it goes like this. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. All people experience difficulty in life. Over 30 years in prison is not something that most people experience, but we all experience difficulty. And that poem is one that heartens me and makes me see that I can keep my dignity and I can continue to never give up and rise above, and that others have done so as well. After I was in Cape Town, I was in the Drakensberg Mountains. I actually met some what were called backpackers. One of the cool things about being a young person and going off and traveling the world is you oftentimes will stay in something called a hostel, which is bunk beds. And there's all these people from different parts of the world, like Australia and Germany and Canada and parts of Africa and Asia, who are traveling the world. And and you make friends with them, and you go do fun stuff like hiking the Drakensberg Mountains, and you exchange phone numbers and say you'll keep in touch, and you never talk to them again. But those friendships are very powerful in the moment and in that time, and they are worth it. So you can see that group as we were in the Drakensberg Mountains. And that bottom left flower there is the country flower of South Africa. After I was done in Cape Town, I traveled back up to Johannesburg and I met Seth. And then we continued our journeys together to the Okavango Delta in Botswana. So we got haircuts before we went. You can see those haircuts in the middle there. I thought about maybe having a mohawk for a little while, but decided not to. And then we got on a tiny plane in Botswana to fly into the middle of the Okavango Delta to go on a walking safari. We're pretending to be afraid in that plane. I actually thought it was pretty fun. So this is the lodge in the Okavango Delta. It is a very, very famous place to see wildlife, and I will be telling you a series of stories about that wildlife in different parts. So I hope you enjoy that. But right here, you can see that on the lodge deck, you could eat delicious meals, and sometimes elephants would just walk by on that savanna. All right, this is where we're going to start our series of stories about animals. But thank you so much for the introduction. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep your seatbelts fastened, or, well, there's no seatbelts in that little canoe right there. So maybe just keep your eye out for the animals that are coming. Thanks.